Have you ever wondered why a woman's absence echoes louder than her presence? Why the man who once took her for granted now kneels at the altar of her memory, haunted by the silence she left behind? This is no ordinary vanishing. This is the art of feminine mystery, sharpened by self-worth and shaped by shadow. It is not abandonment. It is return, not to him but to herself. There is a kind of woman who understands something most do not. She knows that presence can be diluted, but absence is distilled power. Her silence is not an accident. It is a crucible. And within it, a man either confronts his demons or drowns in them. This woman walks away not in anger, not in chaos, but in quiet. She does not slam doors. She closes chapters. No screams. No explanations. Just space. Space that unsettles. Space that breathes. Space that becomes sacred. In that sacred emptiness, she does something radical. She stops performing. She sheds the false skin of pleasing, of hoping, of waiting to be chosen. She doesn't leave to punish him. She leaves to remember herself. To the untrained eye, she seems cold, distant, perhaps even heartless. But Carl Jung would tell you otherwise. He would say she is embodying the anima in her fullness, the unconscious feminine archetype rising not to seduce, but to integrate. The woman who disappears does not do so to vanish. She withdraws to deepen, to descend into the dark ocean of her own psyche, where the ego no longer holds dominion. It is there, in the still waters of solitude, that she begins her individuation. This is the sacred process of becoming whole, of confronting the parts of herself she once disowned. The parts she gave away in exchange for crumbs of affection. The parts she molded to fit into the hollow shape of someone else's desire. Now, she reclaims them. One by one. Shadow by shadow. She no longer confuses being wanted with being worthy. And that is what makes her unforgettable. You see, desire cannot cling to what it has conquered. It clings to what it cannot contain. A man may not know this consciously, but his soul does. His longing sharpens in her absence. Her silhouette becomes a symbol, not of her body, but of her mystery. He begins to see her not as she was, but as what she represents, the feminine that will not be owned. The woman who dares to vanish without a map. And the more he chases her memory, the more he realizes she was never his to begin with. She was only ever with him on loan, a brief crossing in the river of her own becoming. And now, in the stillness she has left behind, he confronts something unbearable, the echo of his own emptiness. For it is not just her he misses, it is the man he could have been in her light. The woman who disappears does not do so out of bitterness. She does not vanish to be chased. She vanishes because her soul demands expansion, and the room she was standing in could no longer contain her. And when she leaves with grace, not vengeance. She carries no blade. Her weapon is detachment. Her gift, transformation. In the quiet, she begins the true work. Shadow work. Jung spoke of it often, the need to confront the unconscious, to wrestle with the hidden self. The woman who disappears does not distract herself with noise or new lovers or the illusions of revenge. She turns inward. She sits with her ache. She holds the grief like a sacred flame. She no longer waits for someone to fix it. She allows the pain to become her teacher. This is where her power multiplies. Because while he fixates on the past, on what was, on what he lost, she moves forward. Not away from him, but toward herself. Toward her truth. Her purpose. Her divinity. The disappearance was never about making him desire her. It was about making herself visible to herself again. And yet, paradoxically, it is in this withdrawal that the obsession is born. Men do not obsess over women who need them. They obsess over women who awaken something buried deep, the forgotten feminine, the mother wound, the untouchable goddess archetype who mirrors both desire and inadequacy. The woman who disappears becomes mythic. She becomes the shadow projection onto which he casts his longing, his guilt, his regrets. But she does not return to fulfill that projection. She is no longer interested in being an echo of his wounds. She is no longer a canvas for his apologies. She does not seek reunion. She seeks reunion with her own soul. And you, if you have felt this stirring inside you, if you have known the pull to vanish not in weakness, but in power, know this: you are not lost. You are not cold. You are not cruel. You are awakening. Your absence is not a wound. It is a mirror. Let him face what he sees in it. The woman who disappears is not merely reclaiming space. She is initiating alchemy. In her silence, something ancient is stirred, both in herself and in him. For the man, the silence becomes a question without an answer, an ache without a source. He may scan every message, every memory, every flicker of eye contact, trying to decipher when exactly she slipped beyond his reach. But the truth is, she was never entirely within it. She always carried with her the scent of something sacred, something he could admire but not possess. And this is what unravels him. The masculine unconscious, Jung teaches, yearns for union with the anima, the soul of woman that dwells in mystery. When a woman embodies her full feminine energy, not the performative kind molded by society, but the raw, sovereign, intuitive feminine, she becomes a portal. Not to fantasy, but to transformation. She forces the masculine to confront what it fears most: the uncontrollable, the emotional, the infinite. In this way, her disappearance is not a rejection, it is an initiation. She withdraws her warmth, and suddenly he feels the winter of his own emotional barrenness. Her smile once lit corners of his psyche he didn't even know existed. But now, with her gone, the darkness returns. He doesn't just miss her. He misses who he thought he was when she was beside him. That illusion, that she completed him, begins to fracture. Because now he must ask, who am I when the mirror walks away? You, the woman listening, know this intimately. You've been taught to offer yourself completely, to overexpose your soul in the name of love. To be seen is validation. To be desired is safety. But that's a lie, stitched together by centuries of female silence. The truth: your value doesn't grow in his presence. It expands in your own. You don't disappear to be chased. You disappear to be remembered, to be reborn, to become whole again. And in that wholeness, you no longer settle for scraps. You no longer tolerate love that is only half awake. You understand that devotion without depth is just distraction, and obsession without self-reflection is merely ego dressed as longing. So many men confuse desire with love because they have not yet done the shadow work to differentiate the two. Desire is often born of lack, of projection. It is not you they ache for, not really. It is what you represent. The woman who dared to choose herself. The woman who did not beg, who did not plead, who did not fold herself into a smaller shape to be understood. He remembers the way your eyes held oceans, the way your laughter made the room softer, the way your silence cut deeper than words ever could. And he will replay those moments, not because he truly sees you, but because he longs to return to a version of himself that only existed in your reflection. But that man, the one he became in your presence, must now be built from within. That is his work. And you must not interrupt his process by returning prematurely. You must let him confront the emptiness. Let him walk the labyrinth of his own projections. Because healing only begins where illusion ends. The Stoics, especially Marcus Aurelius, wrote of detachment as a divine strength. You have power over your mind, not outside events, he said. Realize this, and you will find strength. The woman who disappears has learned this. She no longer tries to control perception, attention, affection. She detaches not to escape, but to elevate. She does not need to be understood. She needs only to be whole. And wholeness is not loud. It is not a performance. It is quiet, unshakable, luminous. A woman who knows her value does not announce it. She walks in it. And every step she takes away from chaos, confusion, and conditional love is a return to her sacred center. If he follows, it must be as an equal, not a pursuer. If he reaches out, it must be with reverence, not entitlement. Because she is not the same woman who once waited for crumbs. She has become fire and water, shadow and sun. She has become her own sanctuary. You must understand this. Your absence is not just space. It is structure. It is architecture. You are not gone, you are ascending. You are not playing hard to get, you are hard to forget. And for him, that is the lesson. That he did not lose you when you disappeared. He lost you long before, when he failed to see you. A man only begins to grasp the magnitude of her absence when he realizes she no longer exists within the realm of his access. Not physically, not emotionally, not even in memory in the way he once held her. Her image becomes fractured, not because she faded, but because she evolved. She is no longer the woman he knew, or thought he knew. That woman was still shaping herself around him. The one who vanished, she shapes herself around nothing but truth. The woman who disappears to be desired is not strategizing. She is not manipulating his instincts. She is surrendering to a deeper law of nature, the law of magnetism, of polarity, of divine feminine gravity. True feminine energy does not chase. It draws in. And when a woman returns to herself, she becomes a gravitational force, pulling everything meant for her into orbit, and releasing all that no longer resonates, including him. Jung understood this. He warned of the dangers of projection, the psyche's tendency to cast its own unprocessed contents onto others. A man may believe he loves her, but what he truly worships is the part of himself she reflects. The woman who disappears breaks this illusion. Her absence ruptures the mirror, forcing him to look directly at himself, unfiltered, unmasked. And for many men, this is unbearable. He is left not only with the pain of losing her, but with the void where his own soul should be. Because he never truly met her as she was. He met her as his ego needed her to be, validating, admiring, soothing, soft. But when she withdraws, she stops feeding the fragile parts of him. And he is forced to meet the man he really is without her reflection polishing his ego. You, the woman who dares to disappear, are not cruel for stepping away. You are courageous. You are not punishing him. You are purifying yourself. There is no power in staying where you are not seen. There is no wisdom in explaining your worth to someone determined not to understand it. And yet, the irony is cruel and poetic. Now that you are gone, you are finally seen. Now that you are no longer offering, your value becomes unmistakable. Now that you no longer wait, your memory haunts him. Because desire grows in scarcity, longing multiplies in distance, and obsession, that potent force, is born not from closeness, but from the inability to possess. Do you know why some women are unforgettable? It's not their beauty. It's not their body. It's not even their brilliance. It is their boundaries, their silence, their refusal to be owned. A woman who disappears on her own terms becomes mythic. She is no longer a person in his mind. She is an archetype, a story, a symbol of what he could not hold, of what he could not reach within himself. There is a reason you feel more powerful now than you ever did in his arms. It's because you're no longer split, no longer diluted. You're no longer giving parts of yourself away to buy presence or patience. You are whole. And in your wholeness, you do not need to be chosen. You choose. You choose peace over chaos, stillness over anxiety, depth over attention. He may try to summon you back, not always with words, but with energy. A message, a song, a memory posted in the hope you'll see. But your soul is already beyond reach. You have shifted timelines. He is calling out to a version of you that no longer exists. Let him remember. Let him ache. Let him sit in the temple of your absence until he understands what presence truly means. Until he learns that proximity is not intimacy. That desire is not devotion. That silence is not surrender. It is sovereignty. You, dear woman, were not created to teach lessons to men who refuse to learn. You are not a test. You are a temple. You are not a wound to be healed by their recognition. You are the medicine. And only those who are ready to meet themselves, not just you, will ever truly be able to hold your light without trying to dim it. You do not owe him closure. You do not owe him explanation. You owe only truth to yourself. Let him find his own way through the ruins. Let him learn to rebuild, not for you but for himself. And if, one day, paths cross again, it must not be at the place where you left off. It must be higher, fuller, realer. You no longer orbit where you once stood. You have risen. You disappear not to create pain. You disappear to protect your peace. The woman who disappears understands a truth the world rarely speaks aloud, that stillness is more terrifying than noise, and absence more commanding than presence. In her vanishing, she becomes the embodiment of restraint, of silent power, of feminine detachment. She does not need to scream to be heard. She does not need to perform to be felt. Her lack becomes a presence of its own, sharper than any words, louder than any cries, more intoxicating than any seduction. And it is here, in this void she leaves behind, that the obsession is born. For most men, love is confused with conquest. It is rooted in the thrill of the pursuit, the validation of being needed. But when a woman refuses to be pursued, when she turns her back not out of resentment but from resolve, something ancient inside him stirs. Not lust, not even grief, but a deeper hunger, the aching desire to merge with something he cannot control. Carl Jung would say that this is when the animal within him, the unconscious feminine, is activated. Not by sex, not by affection, but by mystery. The woman who disappears embodies everything his psyche is starved for: depth, unpredictability, authenticity, and sovereignty. She reflects back to him not a lover, but a mirror of his spiritual longing. And that kind of reflection can't be unseen. It brands the soul. He may try to fill the space she left with noise, distractions, validations, temporary lovers who speak the right words but don't carry her gravity. But none of them will haunt the quiet. None of them will hold the weight of her absence. Because none of them disappeared like she did, not to escape him, but to meet herself. And that difference is everything. There is a certain kind of power a woman wields when she no longer needs to explain herself. When she no longer waits to be chosen. When she chooses herself, with all her wounds, her shadows, her history, and still says, "I will not abandon myself to be loved." This is the essence of individuation, the Jungian process of becoming whole. It is not linear. It is not soft. It is violent in its unearthing. The woman who disappears goes into the wilderness of her own psyche and does not return the same. She confronts the parts of herself that once gave too much. She faces the illusions she wrapped herself in, illusions of love, validation, worthiness. And when she emerges, she is no longer the woman who once begged to be seen. She becomes the woman who sees herself. This terrifies him, because now, she is no longer accessible. Not emotionally, not spiritually, not even energetically. Her absence is not passive. It is powerful. It is active withdrawal. A conscious retreat. A sacred separation. And yet, it pulls him. Like gravity. Like myth. He dreams of her, not as she was, but as she is now. Elusive. Elevated. Enigmatic. She becomes the one who got away not because of timing, not because of fate, but because he was never ready to hold something so whole. You, the one who disappears, you are not playing a game. You are breaking a pattern. You are shattering a cycle that demanded your silence, your shrinking, your sacrifice. You are not cruel. You are clear. And clarity is what shakes the earth. He cannot touch you anymore, not because you've gone cold, but because you've gone inward. You are no longer orbiting his attention. You are rotating around your own axis now. Self-respect, self-devotion, self-return. These are your new gods. These are your new homes. He may send messages wrapped in longing. He may call your name in quiet corners of the night. But you do not answer echoes. You do not walk backwards into flames that once burned you to prove your resilience. You do not resurrect dead things just to prove you are alive. Because now, you understand, a woman who vanishes in the name of her own rebirth does not need to be found. She needs to be left alone. She is not missing. She is transforming. Let him wonder where you went. Let him trace his guilt like a rosary. Let him think he still has time. You are not punishing him. You are preserving yourself. Because self-abandonment is no longer a language you speak. And if he learns anything in your absence, it will not be about you. It will be about himself. His patterns. His blindness. His inability to recognize the sacred when it stood in front of him. And that is your final gift to him. She never wanted to be worshipped. She wanted to be met. To be seen not as a fantasy, not as a mirror for his ego, but as a soul with texture, depth, and fire. But he could not look past his own reflection. He didn't see her, only what she gave. Her softness, her attention, her need to be enough. He fed on that devotion, believing it would always be there. Believing she would bend before she broke. That she would wait. But one day, the woman he thought he knew stepped into herself and vanished. And in doing so, she became unforgettable. This is the nature of true feminine power. It does not cling. It does not beg. It does not announce its exit. It simply disappears, and in that disappearance, it becomes larger than life. She is no longer the woman sitting across from him at dinner, waiting for him to notice her worth. She is now in the fabric of his regrets, the silence between his thoughts, the ache behind his smiles. She haunts not because she intended to, but because he never truly saw her until she was gone. Jung would call this the moment of confrontation with the unconscious. The shadow rises not as punishment, but as truth. Her absence cracks open the illusions he built around his identity. He believed himself to be desired, needed, chosen, and now he faces the emptiness his ego concealed. He is not obsessed with her. He is obsessed with a version of himself he could have become in her presence, if only he had done the work. But he didn't. And now, the weight of that truth sits like a stone on his chest. He scrolls through old texts, replays conversations, searches for signs he missed. But memory cannot hold her anymore. She is no longer who she was when she loved him. Her disappearance was a birth, a crossing into a version of herself that no longer fits into his world. You, the woman who has chosen solitude over self-betrayal, you are not heartless. You are healing. You are not avoiding connection. You are aligning with your truth. Because connection without truth is a prison dressed as intimacy. You've tasted that before. And now you hunger only for what nourishes the soul. You are learning the art of sacred absence. The discipline of detachment. You no longer mistake attention for affection, desire for devotion. And in this space you've carved out, in the silence he can't understand, you've built a new language. A language of self-worth, of self-respect, of self-choosing. There are men who will call this selfish, who will label you cold, dramatic, emotionally unavailable. Let them. That is how the wounded ego speaks when it's denied its favorite meal, your submission. You no longer contort to make others comfortable. You no longer set yourself on fire to keep others warm. You have stopped bleeding for people who never brought bandages. And because of that, you are becoming unrecognizable, even to yourself. In the best way. This is what it means to come home to your soul. You now know what Jung meant when he said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." You are no longer living by fate. You are creating from consciousness. You are rewriting the contract you once signed in silence. The contract that said, "I'll be enough when he finally chooses me." No more. You choose you now. And in that choice, something ancient awakens. Something primal, holy, and dangerous. Not to others, but to the parts of you that once kept you small. The woman you're becoming doesn't just disappear from others. She disappears from her former self. The self who tolerated, who chased, who explained. She is no longer available for half love. And so, to the man who now aches with obsession, let it be known, you are not mourning her. You are mourning the version of yourself you were too afraid to become. She did not leave because she stopped caring. She left because you did. And now, your suffering is not because she's gone, it's because she no longer needs you to return. Because she has returned to herself. And that kind of return, no man can undo. She is not coming back to soothe the ache she didn't create. She is not coming back to remind him of who she was when he forgot. That version of her, the one who waited, who hoped, who dimmed her fire just to be held, she no longer exists. In her place now stands a woman forged by fire and silence, by pain and profound clarity. Not hardened, but refined. Not bitter, but boundaried. This is the final stage of her transformation. Detachment not just from him, but from the need to be seen through his eyes at all. She no longer checks the phone. No longer reads between lines that never held meaning. No longer analyzes silences for secret messages. She has unplugged from the cycle of external validation, from the exhausting effort of translating her worth into someone else's language. Her worth now speaks in stillness, in distance, in the way she no longer explains her leaving. Because real healing doesn't demand announcements. It reveals itself in what you no longer tolerate. Carl Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And that is what she has done. Her disappearance was not a retreat. It was a resurrection. Not from death, but from unconsciousness, from the dream of being loved enough to finally feel whole. That dream has shattered. And in its place rises the woman who no longer waits to be loved, because she has learned to love the one person she always abandoned, herself. She walks differently now, not with the burden of unspoken need, but with the ease of someone who knows her soul has come home. Her energy is not chasing, not performing, not waiting. It is grounded, untamed, magnetic. Not because she's trying to be desired, but because she has become desire itself. A state of being, a flame that warms her own heart first. To the man, she may always remain unfinished. A story without an ending. A haunting. And this is not her fault. It is the price of his own unconsciousness. He did not lose her because she disappeared. He lost her because he never truly arrived. And now, it is too late. Not because she holds anger, but because she has chosen peace. Her peace is not a costume. It is earned. It is built on countless nights of unraveling, of sitting with the ache, of shedding the skin of the girl who once needed him to become herself. That girl is gone. In her place stands a woman who knows that love which demands her sacrifice is not love, it is control. So she does not return. Not even when he calls with trembling voice and late-night apologies. Not even when he says he finally understands. Because now, understanding is not enough. Energy must match presence. Words must match action. And most of all, love must meet her at the level she now meets herself. You, woman of silence, of sacred disappearance, you have not lost him. You have found you. And in finding you, you no longer crave what you once thought was love. Because now, you know, love does not require self-abandonment. Love does not fear your wholeness. Love does not ask you to shrink. You are no longer seeking to be unforgettable in someone else's story. You are writing your own. And in it, you are not the woman who waits, who hurts, who hopes for redemption from someone who once dimmed her light. You are the woman who rose, who remembered, who reclaimed. Your life is no longer a reaction. It is a creation. The obsession he feels, that ache in his chest, the ghost he cannot shake, is not your responsibility to soothe. It is his soul knocking at the door he refused to open when you stood there in the flesh. Now he must open it alone. That is his work. Yours is done. You disappeared not to be missed, but to be met, finally, by yourself. And now that you have returned to your center, you no longer orbit others. You choose. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses. If you've ever walked away not to be followed, but to find yourself again, this story was yours. Comment below. Have you ever disappeared in order to be seen? Like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into female psychology, obsession, and the power of self-return.